Hi, everyone. We are back and we have a treat for you. Samina Bari is here with us. She is the founder of Samina Bari Advisors, and she is going to tell us her amazing story and also tell us what she does and how she can help you. So, Samina, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you. So, yes, you know my name, and you see the title of my talk today. It's called I Can, I Will, and I Did Living Your Life on Your Own Terms. But who am I? So, as Lisa mentioned, I am an advisor in the biopharmaceutical industry following 35 years in that field. I am a board member. I'm a private and a venture investor. I am an author. I am a podcast host, and I am a speaker. I'm delighted to be here with you today to talk about the content, which is primarily in my book, I Can, I Will, and I Did, which is my memoir. So you've heard what I do. Let me tell you who I am. I am um, a first generation child of Pakistani and Indian Muslim parents. And so I was raised in a culture that taught me the difference between men and women. And as you see in my book, there's a saying that I put out there that there's a saying that girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice. And I'd say that girls are made up of everything that men are made of. It's just that culture tells us differently. And that's certainly the environment that I was raised in. My father had faced incredible discrimination when he came here in the 1950s as a young doctor from Pakistan. My mother came over through marriage and held on firmly to her traditional beliefs that women should just be educated and then married off and should not have ambition and should not dream bigger. But because I was here in a Western world, I knew something wasn't right. And the tension between my being raised in an Islamic household versus my everyday reality, which was in a Western world, was very strong. And so I felt that pull to be more like others, the others who I was peers with, than I did with my mother's way of keeping me down. And personally, as I felt it, in the box of a patriarchal society that she wanted me to submit, which is what Islam means. She wanted me to obey, and she wanted me to be very obedient and submissive. And so my whole life, I was told by my mother, you can't. You can't be like the other girls. You can't do what others do. We are different. You won't. You'll never succeed. You won't do anything of any meaning. And you shouldn't, because why would you even try? You're only a girl. You're not as good as a boy. Yes, these are the things my mother actually told me. So I would like to talk to you today about what happens when you hear that negative talk track in your head from childhood and flip it on its script. And every time she told me I can't, I would say to myself I can. Every time she said to me I won't, I said I will. And every time she told me I shouldn't, I did. Now, we're all faced with those choices in life, whether through society or through our families' cultures, where we're expected to be someone that we know we're not inside. And yet, we all have the power to be angry about it and to feel something about it. Some people decide to go with it and they live a life unfulfilled. But I woke up and realized that I was a bit of a rebel. And I wouldn't settle for that. I wouldn't settle for less. I wanted a life that I created that was full of ambition and joy and things that were filled with my dreams. And so I defied my mother and my father at a very young age. And I chose small acts of defiance to continue to embolden me and reinforce the positive in myself rather than be dragged into the negative that my mother would have me live in. So let's start with that. When you're told you can't do something, you can either decide you can't do something because you follow the rules, or you can decide to follow the rules and be deeply unhappy. I chose neither. I played somewhat nicely, but I lived my life with small acts of defiance. So I used that anger inside of me, that dissatisfaction, to really tell myself a different narrative. And when we look at what I can is, what I can do, and I did, was I took the criticism that I received every day of my entire life from childhood through young adulthood to create a self-belief system. So every I can't became an I can, and I'll show you. So I ask you to reflect on what messages you've been told about what you can or cannot do and who told them to you. So much of it is what society expects of us. And in some instances, society and culture combined. That was what I was faced with. Whose voice is in your head that shapes your belief? And when did you first realize that you had the power to change that? Now, I won't say it's easy, and not everyone is born with that self belief. But if you're able to tap into that dissatisfaction and that anger originally, it can be your fuel. It can be turning that script on its head in your head so that you don't become beaten down and don't believe in yourself. Because here's the thing, because you may feel that others don't believe in you has nothing to do with how you believe in yourself. And you must be your own cheerleader in life. And that's what I learned at a very young age. If I was told I couldn't do things, I had to counter that voice, and that was for my own survival. Because what I realized is I wanted something more, and I had to look beyond the immediate criticisms to create the life that I wanted on my own terms. So small acts of rebellion were really very important to me. Not dressing the way I was expected to dress, missing curfews at night. Now, they may seem like belligerence or, just pettiness, but they were little ways of claiming my freedom, my independent thought, and my self belief. And believe it or not, that gives you little doses of courage throughout the way to keep going. And confidence like that creates more confidence. And really, the tension that I described, the tension that I faced in my household every single day, was what shaped me. Because what I came to realize very, very early on is I was never going to be the daughter my mother wanted. And I had to also realize that I had a life to live beyond my mother, that one day my mother would be gone and I would be left to live with the decisions that I had made. Did I want a life of regret, or did I want the life of my choosing on my terms? And so that North Star, essentially a long-term plan for myself, was what drove me. I continued to look towards the end goal, and I willed it and manifested it to happen through every little action and step I took. So I would sit in my room as a teenager and I would dream of a big world and a big life where I was a boss. I would dream of a handsome, green eyed man with dimples who I would have children with one day. I dreamt of working in a big city surrounded by powerful people and one day being my own boss. I dreamt of fitting in and being in complete control of my future. And I let nothing stop me. And it helped me balance out that critical voice that taunted me really on a daily basis, that kept on telling me what I couldn't, shouldn't, or wouldn't do. And it became the fire that fueled me throughout my formative years. And so when you're able to do that, you're able to trust yourself more because you've now taken control of yourself. So your gut becomes your barometer. How you feel is your guide. Believing in yourself is what saves you from the negative chatter in your life. And every no became a proof point for yes. Those are the acts of rebellion, the things you say to yourself that can really turn your world around and make you believe in yourself, believe in who you are, trust yourself, and manifest the life that you want, and drown out the negative talk, and understand for yourself that yes, you may disappoint people, but their disappointment will wane. You have to live with the decisions you make, and you don't want to look back at your life as one of regret. So those are always the tenets I have lived by. I have always trusted my gut, and it has never failed me. You all have that. We all have that. But sometimes we let others talk us out of it, or we don't believe in ourselves or our gut enough because of societal pressures or cultural pressures. But we're all born with this human instinct, and it's there for a reason. And let's face it, no one knows you in your heart better than you. So no one outside of you and your heart should be setting a course of direction for your life. And when we think about all of the amazing things we can do, it emboldens us and it encourages us and it continues to feed us and reward us. And those are so many of the things that I found when I was able to not let the negative self-talk get in my way. I found my voice. I found my purpose. I found my dream. I anchored my future to it, and everything I did was very singularly focused on advancing me in the life that I wanted on my terms. And so when it comes to what I was able to action that against, I was able to actually accomplish things. So I will. I believe in myself, and now I will go out and I will do these things. And will is a very, very powerful word, because will is our intention, but will is I have done it. I am doing it. I believe in myself, and I am creating that forward momentum. And so all of the things that I taught myself and I learned throughout my childhood allowed me to grow into the young person I was meant to be. I was able to defy my parents' expectations. I went to college and studied a journalism degree when my parents expected me to be a doctor. I lived on my own in a dormitory that was co-ed, which was mind blowing for my parents. I bought a house on my own and lived outside of the house, my parents' house, when it was not acceptable for a young woman of a Muslim background to do so. I got a job in New York City and worked alongside men and women who were very focused and driven. And in fact, I was like the other people my mother told me I would never be part of. So I lived that life despite what I was told, because I envisioned it and I believed in myself, and I never let my mother's negative talk affect me in that way. I used that anger to fuel what I wanted to do. So all of the things I accomplished in my life, I was able to proudly say I did it myself, because what I'd also come to realize as a young adult was I was living two identities. I was living an identity for my mother in which she saw me in a certain way and was unhappy with what she saw. But I was living a life that I wanted. And so we never reconciled them. And I was okay with that. And I think that's also a trick when you're in an oppressive or a submissive situation. Don't let it dampen your fire, because you can still be who you want to be. People may not see you that way, but again, they'll get over it, and you have to live with your life. So the I will was really a testament to the struggle from growing up. In addition to doing all of those amazing things, I traveled the world alone as a young business person. I explored new countries, new cities. I had amazing experiences. I worked with the very people my mother said I would never be as good as, middle-aged white men, really. And even in those years of my early 20s, when I would work very, very hard, she would still say to me, I don't know why you work so hard. You're never going to be as good as a man. Yes, that made me angry, but it did not invalidate my belief in myself. And so when you put that belief into action, it really does create a new sense of you. And when I throw up these questions here, you know, I had often called myself a black sheep. And I actually liked that because to me, a black sheep is better than being sheep. I don't want to follow what everyone expects of me. I want to stand out. Whether that black is good or bad, it's different. And that's who I was. What happens when you quiet that voice and doubt and listen to your own? You can do more if you cheer yourself on and not let that negative self talk erode at your spirit of belief and confidence in yourself. And that's certainly what I was able to do through my formative years of adulthood. And where in your life, I ask you, are you being asked to speak up or show how you can be present more often? Because those are the moments and opportunities that allow us to feed and validate the decision making that we've taken on for ourselves. In me and for me, that was finding my people, finding the people in my life who were true friends, who didn't judge me, who didn't question me, who didn't criticize me, who didn't tell my secrets, but who supported me. And that is a very big part of life that when you're in your 20s and 30s, you don't realize. But as life has its ups and downs, trusted friendships and finding your people, your chosen family, as I call them, is one of the most precious gifts you can give yourself, both now and your future self, because those people, along with you, prop you up and are your cheerleaders. And they are the ones who can support you when you don't get support in other places. And those are the people who can be truthful with you in a kind way that only they can be, that doesn't hurt your feelings, but gives you confidence and conviction and constructive criticism so that you can be a better version of you. And I'm so excited to have found my friends over 30 years ago, again in that early 20 age that I was in, living in New York City. I found my friends then, and I'm still friends with them. And we've been through so many life moments together that they'll always be there. And when you have that group of people to support you, now you have wind behind your back. Now it's not just you and your self-belief, but you've got others who are validating their belief in you to accomplish great things. One of the most amazing things that I was able to do as part of my transformation and my lived experience was understand my worth. I had done it all myself, and I worked in a very male dominated business environment. And what I realized is that um, being polite and kind of taking on a traditional female role in a male industry wouldn't work for me. And again, I had ambition that some called aggressive. And let me tell you, it wasn't aggressive. It was just not seen in women at the time. And so what I learned was I was not going to ask permission first. I was going to be every bit as competent and confident as my male peers. So what I have always done is taken my seat at the table without being waited, but without waiting to be asked. Um, and a case in point is um, the belief in yourself. What if showing up before it feels ready is exactly what readiness looks like? There's never a moment in time that you feel 1,000% confident. Everyone gets nervous. So do I. But what if you trust yourself? I was at a company a while ago where I was the third hired female on an executive committee. And I went to my first board meeting where all of the male and female board members were seated at the table, and all of the male executives who were my peers were seated at the table, and my two female peers were seated on the outside against the wall. I walked up to the table and I took my seat at that table. And I was the only female on that executive committee who sat at the table every single meeting. And I spoke when I wasn't asked a question because I was contributing. And I offered counsel and guidance, and it was heeded. And that is, again, one of those acts of defiance, perhaps an act of privilege that I took for myself because I knew I would be waiting forever if I was waiting to be asked. Another great example of it is I was being yelled at many years ago by a male client who had a habit of calling up the other women I worked with and would yell at them. Because I knew I wouldn't accept it, I simply gently told him that I thought he needed to calm down, and I silently hung up the phone mid yell. Well, as predicted, he called me back a few minutes later laughing, and he said that no one had ever done that before. And it was quite effective because it calmed him down. And that's a trick I've used a few other times, mostly with men, because it also sends a powerful message that you cannot talk to me that way. The way that some men talk to women and the way other women talk to women, frankly, is unacceptable. But you have to believe in your value and your self-worth enough to not want to take it. And again, as I said earlier, confidence begets more confidence. The more you get it, the more you do it, the more you work through your discomfort doing these things, the more second nature it becomes. And that is probably the biggest gift you can give yourself. I hear so many stories of women who suffer from imposter syndrome. That's not something that they're born with. That's something that society has put them into. It's created a construct that women shouldn't believe in themselves, that women shouldn't be ambitious, that women shouldn't speak up, that women should say sorry. So I do try to coach women to stop feeling that way. There is no one that is telling them they're an imposter. It's themselves. So again, if we can change that negative self-talk track in our heads, that's where the power comes in. Here's another small example that I suggest you try. Something I've noticed, and I think it's been documented, is that women tend to say, I'm sorry. And men, you'll never hear a man say, I'm sorry. And that includes in the workplace. So I thought I would use that to experiment that with myself at a company. And I stopped apologizing. I stopped saying sorry for anything, even if there was a misalignment. And what I noticed after doing it for about a week was the dynamic between the men and I completely shifted. And it became much more leveled. And let me tell you that it's an empowering feeling to not say, I'm sorry. I think we're just taught to do that. And so it becomes part of our daily routine and our language. But what happens if you stop saying it? Because you know what? You're not sorry. There's nothing wrong that you did. We are acting in a construct that wasn't made for us. And by saying sorry, it's again asking permission for a role that you shouldn't have to ask permission for. And when you stop apologizing for taking up space or for not living up to someone's expectations, it's absolutely freeing. And that will also give you that boost in determination and conviction and power that you need. And all throughout my life, I lived with my mother's voice. And I I drowned it out. And all of these acts of accomplishment and feats that I was so proud of helped drown it out more and more. so that the fuel that I was using before, which was anger, became confidence. My confidence became my new fuel in that stage of life. And that's what we have to remember. We always have choices. Do we choose to let others shape and mold us, or do we choose to stand up for ourselves? And those are choice points throughout the continuum of life. And it's how we show up and the decisions we make and the consequences we know we have to live with that help us make those choices. And for me, I was not going to be a dutiful Islamic daughter. I was not religious. I'm not religious now. I was able to even find my green eyed, dimpled husband during those days. And I made my dreams come true regardless of what my parents thought. And so I did. I did create the life that I had hoped to create. I was a successful pharmaceutical executive, a biotech executive. I was on fire with all of that. I helped structure and facilitate massive M&A deals worth $40 billion. I had moved my family to the West Coast, so we had been relocated to very successful and lucrative um, roles, and we were living a great life. I had married the man of my dreams. My parents, I guess I had waited them out too long. They didn't object, but I made that all happen. And life doesn't always go our way. I didn't have children right away. My husband and I went through a lot of struggle to have our children, and we finally had our children. I had my career. My husband had his career. We had a beautiful house, dogs. I have accomplished everything I had. And it was a moment in life that I'm very proud of. So when I looked at all of the actions I took and the transformation of who I was and what I could have become to where I did go, it really was a testament to my fight and to the friends I built and developed along the way, and the husband who supported me in the way I should have been supported. And so I ask you to take a look back. What pain have you been able to turn into a strength? Because again, those are those decision points. I could very easily have allowed my mother's negative voice to push me down, and I could have not dared to dream, and I could have complied with all of her wishes, and I could have been married and not accomplished anything. But I likely would have suffered with tremendous depression and anxiety and such discontentment with life. What barriers did you once think were immovable or unsurmountable, and how could you move past them? These are all of the questions that I've asked myself. And it's never too late. And that's the one thing I do want to say, because life is a continuum. There are points along the way that don't define our future success. Um, there are certainly things that can help us get there, but it's never too late to make a change. So if you're stuck, if you're there now, I just ask you to reflect on what you can do differently. How can you rewrite your script? How can you rewrite your story? Because I set out many, many years ago with a North Star. So I was a long-term planner. And I looked back at what I had accomplished against the odds of everything my mother told me I couldn't, wouldn't, and shouldn't. And I have accomplished them all. And so that is the power of you and me. And tuning out all of the naysayers and tuning out all the societal constructs and listening to your heart and listening to your soul and making the choices you make for you. You will know the consequences. You will know the benefits, but you'll also know the regrets you will face later in life if you don't do something or if you do do something. And I think we all want the same thing. We all want to look back at our lives and have as few regrets as any. And that's where I am in my life right now because I did what I set out to do on my terms. So, a few things that I have said to myself is I'm always where I need to be. I am a mother. I am an executive. I am busy. You are all busy. We are not superwomen, and I don't understand where that phrase came from because it's taken from Superman. But we can only do what we can do. The important thing is we are where we need to be in the moment we need to be there. We don't have to be everyone to everything to everyone. And I've been very good at creating limits for myself and boundaries for myself. And that's a really important part of fueling your own success, understanding your own boundaries, respecting them, and demanding others respect them. And sometimes, allies are different than the ones we expect. I spoke earlier about my friends being a source of encouragement. But what I found along the way is that throughout my corporate career, the female bosses that I had were not my allies. And you would think that they would be, but many of them were mean girls. And what I realized was it wasn't about me, it was about them and their own insecurities. The biggest allies I had throughout my corporate career happened to be the middle-aged white men that my mother had warned me I was never as good as, or I'd never be as good as. And many of them were my sponsors and my mentors because they too had daughters. And they also understood the importance of having male allyship to advance in a male-dominated world. And look at everything in your life as an accomplishment, no matter how small. Because simple decisions you make, simple statements that you stand up for yourself, hanging up the phone on someone who's rude with you, not taking someone else's negativity, setting boundaries with friends and family, cutting off toxic relationships, those are all acts of defiance, but acts of self-protection, acts of self-belief, and acts of self-love. And those are all of the things that you need to be strong for yourself, for your future, to accomplish your dreams and your aspirations in the face of a million no's. I can't, or you can't, and you shouldn't. Because we get them, I got them from my mother, and I got them from the society and the culture she was with. And that was my framework for growing up. But it's around us everywhere. It's around us in society. It's around us in politics. It's around us in, the supermarket and everywhere we go. It is just the way the world is right now. And unfortunately, things haven't changed that much since I was a child in terms of that power dynamic, but it is. And it starts with you. It starts with that self-belief. It starts with believing in yourself and what you can do. And it also extends to acts of kindness to others, to other women, and help lifting us up, which is why I'm delighted to be part of this conference because we are stronger together. We can learn from each other. We can help each other and we can rise together. Now, I laid out a fairly linear pathway of my life and what I was able to accomplish. But there are some things beyond our control. I had it all. I had overcome and I had lived a beautiful, perfect life for me. I had the career I wanted, the happiness I wanted, the freedom from my mother that I'd wanted. I lost my parents many years ago. I have a husband and pets and travel and dogs and wonderful, wonderful experiences. But life had other plans. In April of 2023, my beautiful husband was in a terrible accident and was killed. And everything I knew about myself crumbled. And I was broken. And lost and parenting two young children through grief on top of my grief. And I let life break me because there are times that you just have to go with what's happening. You can't fight everything all the time. And so I did that. And I really took to bed for 6 months, a year, and needed people's help to help me get back to being a mother and a parent and a person. And then I made a decision that I needed to live the best I could to set an example for my children. And so I picked myself up the floor and I published a memoir that I had been writing for many years. And I rewrote my final chapter. And I included what happened with my husband. And when the grief finally lifted about 6 or 8 months ago, I wrote a second book. And it is a book about how to support spouses when they lose their spouse. Because even though these were the worst moments of my life, there's always something to learn. There's always something to do with that experience. And so resilience takes time, takes practice. It's not always perfect, but it's probably the most important muscle you will need to survive a life that you can't always control. And so the people you put into your lives and welcome into your lives and who welcome them into yours, into theirs, and the choices we make and the decisions we make all have long-term consequences. But it's what we do with everything. It's the choices we make after the most profound losses, after the biggest challenges, that help us move forward with as much grace and passion and purpose as we can. And so, yes, I can, I will, and I did defy everything that my mother had tried to beat into me. And then life had other plans. But the choice is always yours to do what you think is right for you. So if you have a fire in your belly that you are dissatisfied with, or you feel something is wrong, let that be your fuel. Don't let sadness or depression or hopelessness or helplessness enter the equation. Trust your own gut, because it really is the best internal barometer you have. And it's there for a reason. It is connected to you for you. Be your loudest and proudest cheerleader. Again, because if you aren't, you can't fuel yourself to allow others to see how great you are, to help add them onto your cheerleading squad. Find your people. That's probably the most important piece of advice I can give, because nurturing your community in the best of times helps everyone stand taller in the worst of times. And build a circle of people who lift you and keep them close. Build people, find people early in life, nurture them, become family. I like to call them chosen family, because they are the people in my life who choose to love me and my children. They are the ones who even today fill the gaps of what my husband's loss has left in my life. And remember, everything is a decision. Choose to live without regrets. My regret, of course, is that my husband died, but I couldn't do anything about that. For everything that I chose on my own terms, I don't regret that. And I think that's the best life you can live. But you have to be able to see your future self and talk to your future self and think and envision how you want it to play out. Because you are your best advocate. And the next time someone tells you you can't do something, just take a deep breath, believe in yourself, because that's where your fire and your fuel begins. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to just thank you all for listening and for believing in yourselves. And hopefully, I've given you some little bit of wisdom that you can take on your way and help fuel the best life you can for yourself.
Thank you, Samina. That was beautiful and so touching. And after spending 40 years in corporate, I can definitely relate to some of your stories. In fact, I wrote down, I have a story. I worked for one of the largest tech companies in the world and was handling an acquisition, and went into one of the meetings with the company we were acquiring, and um, no other women in the room. So I sat down in the middle of the table, long table. I sat down in the middle so I could be in
Good.
front of the screen because I always want to be close so I can see. And they started presenting because I was making decisions, and you know, they had to impress me. And they put up their org chart and started walking through their org chart. And they were finished, and they said, "Does anybody have any questions?" And I raised my hand, and I said, "Why aren't there any women on your org chart?" And the entire room went silent. Nobody said a thing for about 20 seconds. And I just waited. I didn't beg for an answer. I just stopped and waited. And somebody else got up from their company, got up from the table, switched the slide, and kept talking. Didn't address my question, didn't
Wow.
say anything about it.
Oh, that's awful.
So it was awful, right? So one of the things that I did when I got back and put into one of the contracts is that we needed to see a certain amount of people, women on the or at the on the senior management level, before we would even consider acquiring the company. And they made the change, but at the time it was really shocking to sit there and sit through a half an hour of them telling me every single person in the senior management team and not one woman.
Yeah, no, I believe it. And
Yeah.
that's why when I did have female bosses, it was so disappointing that they were so awful to me,
Mm-hmm.
and that they weren't my supporters, because you would think with so few women in a corporate work environment, you would band together, you would support one another. But
No.
unfortunately, there's such a scarcity mindset. And I took that to heart and realized that it wasn't me. I had
Right.
done nothing wrong, and there was nothing wrong. It was their problem. And, and
Right.
that's why, I focus now on women supporting women, because it was the support I didn't get. And it's
That's
the support that
exactly what.
every woman needs in their career, in their life.
Right. And that's exactly what we talk about here is what were those things that we didn't get when we were coming up through the ranks? We didn't get mentorship. We didn't get, that support system that we so desperately needed. And yes, there were a few, like you said, middle-aged white men who were kind of like, I see you, I recognize the work that you're doing, and I'm supporting you. And I'm so grateful for those people. They're few and far between, but
They are.
yeah. But the women, usually the women that were supposed to support you, even just because you're a team member, it wasn't happening, and often felt that you might be outdoing them or competing with them or something, instead of, I was always taught as a manager to hire people who can do your job, right? Hire people that you trust that could do your job, because you need people on your team that are capable,
Correct.
and not worrying about whether they're going to take your job or not. If you're a good manager, then you've got this really great high functioning team, and you don't have to worry about it, and your training is minimized, and all of those things. So yeah, it's interesting, and because I have so many women friends in corporate America, and at this high level, we have these conversations often. So one of the things about She Is Me and about the leadership and about what we're doing to mentor and bring women into entrepreneurship especially women who are leaving corporate and want to be able to use what they know about business and teamwork and management and all of those things, but don't necessarily want to go back into that corporate machine.
Hmm.
We really want to work with women who are in that position, because I think those women are the leaders that we're looking for.
Yes,
Those
I
women are,
agree.
yeah.
I applaud that, and I think there is just more awareness of that mindset and that
Mhm.
the way women used to be in corporate
Mhm.
America. And certainly, I think it does depend on industry. There are, I can't imagine being an investment banker still, or in a venture firm as the only woman. Those are very different industries, but by and large, those were not the industries I was in. But by and large, I think there is a little bit more recognition, but I'm really so pleased to see the upspringing of all of these efforts meant to empower, embolden, and connect women to support other
Mhm.
women. And we were talking earlier. In addition to She Is Me, I'm on the board of How Women Lead, which is another amazing organization meant to connect women. And I'm a venture partner in How Women Invest, which is a women-run fund that supports only women-founded companies.
Right.
So there's so many different ways women can show up for each other and create this new business ecosystem, which is what we so
Mhm.
desperately need.
Desperately. And you're going to be sitting on the panel tonight. So we're going to be talking about women and money and creating these new systems and a lot of statistics about women and getting funding and I just saw a statistic while you were talking. 51% of all businesses are owned by women, but generate only 10% of the revenue.
I'm going to have to look into that source. I have
Yeah,
other statistics too. I have statistics that show that
yeah.
women run businesses consistently outperform male run businesses.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, we're gonna have to bring
Yeah,
those numbers tonight.
absolutely.
Um, Especially, I want to talk tonight too about the amount of women's businesses that get funded, because that's something that I think has been very heavily weighted towards male run businesses. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's really important to discuss. But we've got a lot to cover later, and it's going to be a wonderful panel. So, thank you for serving on the panel, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
You're welcome. All right, we'll be back at the top of the hour, and we're going to be with Catherine Tapper. So, stay tuned.